I received an email through this channel's Facebook page which included a number of different suggested topics of interest, and I realized that I don't think I've done anything on jealousy and envy, which are often related. And a couple examples of jealousy would be either you're with somebody romantically who has a close friendship with someone else, or perhaps you are interested in someone who is not available because they're in another relationship and you're jealous of that relationship. So in the first example, I think that if you are with somebody who is connected closely with someone else and it brings up feelings of jealousy, it's something to pay attention to. I mean, a lot of people cheat, percentage-wise, and so you have to distinguish between what is your intuition and what is your fear. If the person in general does not seem trustworthy or in integrity, then it may be that your intuition is telling you that they are creating energy with another person, doing things that they wouldn't do in your presence, and that kind of thing. But if you feel a deeper sense of trust and you sense that this is just your fear, this is probably coming from a feeling of dependence and emptiness that is a common fear, because you might feel as though your happiness depends upon this person being with you now and always. And it's that desire for always that creates the suffering, because ultimately we can't control what another person's going to do. And so if we're always feeling dependent, then that's going to create feelings of jealousy and neediness and oh, kitty. And so we have to get comfortable with ourselves ultimately, and know that any attempts to control or reduce the other person's choices for our own neediness is really just going to backfire. And so we have to surrender to what is and deal with our own insecurities, because biologically there is a tendency towards neediness of another because of our desire to, the way we're pre-programmed to mate and have children. And and there's also a lot of sociological pressure to pair up, be in a relationship, and so you could tell yourself, well, I remember being lonely and single and it was horrible. And in reality, it's not always good to be in a relationship, and it's not always bad to not be in a relationship. Our ego can trick us into saying, oh, well, being with somebody is always better. But you can look for unique examples, such as times when you are single in which you just feel content. You're just doing your thing. You're reading a book or playing a game or whatever, doing your thing. And you feel fine, and you're single, and all is fine. And that's enough. And there are times in relationships where you might be in some kind of tension, or there's some passive-aggressive energy, or a feeling of disconnect. It's like our ego can forget about all those different examples of when it's not pleasant to be in a relationship and say that's always preferred, because then the ego stays in control, because we're always needy. We're always looking for something outside of ourselves, which keeps ego and fear dominating our life. Now, in the example of if there's somebody that you want to be with, but they're with someone else, they're not available to you, and you might feel jealous that that other person has access to what you want. I think that what comes into play here is a lack of trust that you are okay with the lessons that you're currently getting. In other words, no matter what your situation is, everything is set up perfectly in your life for your growth. So you could take an example like that, take a situation where you don't have access to somebody that you'd like to be with, and say, this is horrible, and I need to get with that person, or drive a wedge between them and their relationship, or just put my life on hold until that person is available, or whatever, and then it'll be better. And that shows that your ego is in control, in the sense that you don't think that you're going to be able to find somebody that's more compatible. What could be at play in that kind of jealousy is a family dynamic where somebody that you want to love you isn't really being loving, and so you want, like from a childlike place, you want love, nurturance, attention, but you're not getting it, and so that can lead to thinking that is love, and you want to play that out indefinitely in other relationships where you have unreciprocated love, or you want somebody that's unavailable, because that keeps you suffering, and that's maybe what you're familiar with. And you can use that to pay attention to that dynamic in your life and realize how you're beating yourself up unnecessarily. But you have to trust that your life is perfectly customized for the lessons that you need. And you can just envision a person who is available coming into your life at some point, when it is right timed, and having qualities that you like, and somebody that's not available, but somebody who actually wants to be with you and is available, and that's even better. But not put off your happiness until such an event occurs, because it's all in the mind, so much of happiness, and so what we tell ourselves is a big part of whether or not we're feeling peace or suffering. So you can fight against what's happening right now in your life, or you can just surrender to it and be with it. And in terms of envy, a lot of times envy occurs because you wish that you had something, or had the life in general of another person. And this again has to do with not trusting that your life is customized perfectly for your lessons and for what you need. So what you can do when you recognize envy is ask yourself, what does this person's life have that I don't have? Because it can tell you a lot about who you are and what you want based on who you envy. You can utilize this ego function of envy for your growth by examining it consciously. So if you envy Donald Trump, that's one thing. And then if you envy a spiritual teacher like Eckhart Tolle, that's another thing. If you look at Donald Trump and think, oh, he is so powerful and he's got a really hot wife and a lot of influence and money, that shows that you're grasping onto relatively shallow, materialistic, and superficial kinds of interests. And if you envy Eckhart Tolle because he has a peaceful mind and he's in a relationship with somebody who's peaceful, seems to be, and almost certainly is, because he doesn't seem like a person who would settle, then that says something about what you value as well. And that's more of a good sign, I think, in terms of spiritual growth and personal growth, that you want that. But don't allow your interest in somebody who has a state of being, a state of presence that you like, don't allow that to become a source of suffering by saying, well, unless I get to that point, then my life is going to really suck. And so I need to do whatever I can to be like Eckhart Tolle, and then I'll be at peace. It's like, no, you don't need to be like Eckhart Tolle. You don't need to be like Donald Trump. You just need to be like your true, authentic self. And ego will block that goal and say, look around you. Who seems happy? You know, when you see them on TV or in videos or whatever, who appears to be truly having a good time in this life? And then you can, instead of just saying, well, there's something for me to work towards in certain ways and make choices that guide me towards that outcome, then your ego can say, well, see how miserable your life is, see how horrible it is, and how you're really never going to be happy because it's just about comparison. That's all ego is interested in on that level, is comparison. Comparing you to another person is going to keep you in the one down position, and so things can't be good. But if you replace that with a feeling of, okay, this is what I like in my life and this is what I don't like in my life. I'm going to have gratitude for what I have, and I'm going to make choices that move me closer to what I don't have. And so these kinds of insights that you allow yourself to have as you witness the kind of grasping that occurs with jealousy and ego can determine whether or not this is going to be something that you choose to beat yourself up with or utilize for your own awareness, because that's really what it's all about. It's not about needing to be free of all attachments and all grasping and other ego-motivated kinds of thoughts. It's about recognizing where you're at and continuing to work on it and be gentle on yourself, because you don't have to reach a state of enlightenment before you feel at peace with your life. You can accept yourself as you are, where you're at, and say, hey, you know, compared to a lot of other forms of life and sentient entities on this planet, I'm doing pretty good. You know, my life is better than most insects in certain kind of qualitative ways, so I'm moving right along.